sorry about that, recording that. And then do I,
They wanted to make a comment at this point, Amy?
Well, I believe
oh yeah,
he raised her hand.
Yeah.
Michael did because I think he wants to come on over to as a panelist.
yeah.
Okay, while we're bringing them over, they can still hear this, I think, right? Just to note, comments during the meeting are limited, so if you're going to speak, we encourage you to submit, obviously, your comments in writing, but if you haven't, then we're going to try to get all of your comments in. We ask you to limit them to 2 minutes, and not repeat any points that other public folks have mentioned. And at the 2-minute mark, we'll turn off your microphone. So please try to get it down to those 120 seconds there. Okay, so at this point, let's see, do we have the 2 members of the public on? And if so, do either of them want to speak at this point?
There's no,
I don't think there's public members. I just
No.
think Michael and Alex need to be promoted to panelists.
yeah,
Oh, there you go. Okay, so I see Alex now and Michael. Michael's got his hands up, so
right.
I don't know if you needed to say anything, Michael, but anyway, okay, so let's move on then to the business at hand. At this point in the agenda, we need a motion to approve the April 14th differential item functioning analysis working group public meeting minutes. So do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I see.
Heather say she moved it. Is there a second to approve the minutes? And I see
Second.
Shalak approving the Shalak Richards approved the second. All those in, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye, please, or raise your hand.
I'm going to call a roll call for that as well.
Okay,
Yes.
fine.
Okay.
Okay, let's do that.
Ms. Haynes,
Aye.
Mr. Bolton, Dr. Bolton.
Aye.
I'm trying to remove Mr. Chan. I know I'm trying to move him into panelist. Mr. Asiri. Ms. Peak.
Aye.
Ms. Richards. And Mr. Torres.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, and I saw, I think Michael or Alex had his hand
Yeah.
up, so.
Yeah.
there's-
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
Thank you.
That being, and I don't hear any objections or abstentions, so with that, those meeting minutes are approved. Let's go on now to the business at hand. And the first item up under our business is the results of the analysis of the working group review of the selected exam items flagged with differential item functioning. At this point, I'd like to introduce and welcome our guest, Ron Pai from ORIA. So Ron, take it away. Thank you for being with us today.
Good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen. What I'm going to present the results of the exercises. For working group members going through 20 question items, reviewing 7 different areas that might present potential biases. And these 7 dimensions listed on the screen here are based on material that we have the experts providing training on diff. And using the 20 questions, I received the results from 7 members. And because there are 7 questions, the overall total number of data points I have to review and analyze to see some potential patterns added up to 980 data points, which is essentially just 980 cells with 1 and 0s. 1 meaning that there are some issues working group member have identified in any one of the 20 questions related to any one of the 7 items here. And in this table, the 2 dimensions I listed here, one, the rows represent each of the 7 dimensions and the columns represents the working group members. So we have a 7 by 7 matrix here. And the numbers in each cell represents members where they identified out of the 20 questions, some potential issues related to any of the dimensions. So the total number of the cells where you have potential flags is 980. And on the columns and at the bottom, the rightmost column in the bottom shows the percentage of the question items that have been flagged. Looking across the rows and columns, you can see the summary of the results. And it shows that across the individual dimensions, gender and stereotype among the 7s, they have been flagged the most frequently. And language that someone may found offensive or unfair representation, those are the ones that's been flagged the least frequently. And across working group members in how frequently they have identified potential flags, it ranges from 4, the smallest, to 41, or in percentage terms, 3% of the total items flagged is the lowest, to 1/4 of the total. So there are substantial variations across the items as well as between individual members. So the next thing I look at is, for all of those items flagged, to what extent there's some agreement among working group members in identifying issues in some of those question items. And the chart here shows, again, in 2 dimensions, the vertical axis shows the percentage of the question items flagged. And on the horizontal axis is a score that I calculated to represent the degree of agreement among working group members in flagging certain issues. So that number ranges from 0 to 1, represents the degree of agreement. 1 representing perfect agreement among working group members in flagging certain items. This is essentially the same reliability score used in assessing the reliability of exam questions. And both on these 2 metrics, we can see here, gender, again, it's the most frequently flagged item. And there's also a high agreement among working group members. In other words, in a question, member 1 may see something related to gender that might cause some potential bias. You're more likely to see other members flagging the same question. That's what that score, high score, represents. In contrast, the lowest one is, again, representation. It's not frequently flagged, and also where it's been flagged, there's no agreement, very little agreement across members. After reviewing the frequency and the agreement, the next is to see whether there's any correspondence between the frequency of certain items flagged by working group members and how in the diff study certain items have been flagged. Now remember, the way the study flagged certain items is very different than how the members review the question items to flag the issues. In the study, a question item is flagged based on different performances across subgroups of the exam takers. And the way we are looking at flags by the working group member is based on assessment and the perception that they see in those questions. So theoretically, you don't necessarily, you would expect some correspondence, but this is just a presentation in comparing the results between the 2 set of assessments. And when I group the questions into 2 groups on the basis of what the study had flagged them with either high or low diff flags, there's no correlation between the frequency of the flag in the study compared to the frequency of the flags by the working group members. And the frequency of the dimensions here based on one particular item related to gender, also there's no statistical significant difference in the frequency of those items being flagged between the high diff question items and the low ones in the study. So that's the overall results. And then I have another slide just showing the frequency by question items. And this was used by staff member to go into a little more detail about at the question item level to see some items that had higher frequency of flags. In the total flag column, the second to the last column there, you can see also the distribution of the frequency of the working group member evaluation results. So that's summarizes the overall working group exercises in reviewing the question items. Any questions up to this point?
So Ron, thanks so much. That's excellent. A lot of information. What kind of conclusions do you draw from this, or recommendations do you make based on all this data you found of how we resolve these issues?
In my interpretation, it represents the effort and the exercise is primarily for purpose of minimizing potential bias in the process of developing the questions. And the diff study is sort of after you have the question, you have the exam, a follow-up, a different effort, more statistically focused, trying to make sure with all of the efforts you put in to minimize potential bias in the questions, whether it's language or any other items that we have reviewed here, is not reflected in the actual results of the exam across the different subgroups. The two exercises may not necessarily come together because they are based on entirely different metric, but they don't necessarily contradict each other.
Well, and Sal, and group, I think if we talk a little bit about what we want to do with the data as a next step, I think it'll shed some light on, you know, the goal of this group, which is to develop guidelines for the elimination or reduction of future diff on the bar exam.
Yeah.
So,
And
go
actually, let me ask Ron this. I mean, is it, I mean, there's a lot of science that goes behind this. And sometimes I think the problem we have is that there's so much science and so much data that goes with it. Nobody knows how to translate it into layman's terms. So is it as simple, Ron, as saying, stop using these words or stop using these terms? Or is it something much more complicated than that? When the committee, but when the folks that are making up the bar exam, is it as simple as giving them those bright lines, stop using these words, don't use these kinds of examples, or is it something more nuanced than that?
The decision at the level of developing the questions and then assessing whether certain terms or language use is problematic or not, that to me, it represents a process of question development at the collective decision, trying to come up with the best way of presenting the exam questions to the exam takers so that it doesn't really cause potential issues. And the potential issues could only be statistically evaluated using the diff study result technique. But that actually has some distance from the process used in evaluating the questions in the development process. An example is in one of the studies I have come across where it's an exam or evaluation instrument used by pediatricians to assess health issues in children. And at the end, when they evaluate the efficacy of this particular instrument, they found out the female doctors did much better using the instrument in identifying potential health issues in children than male. And they did more study and then interviews. They found out it's not so much because the way the questions and the other exam development issues, it's the experience of a female pediatricians. They simply are more in tune with how children talk, and they have a better way of just getting information from children. So it has nothing to do with some intrinsic issue, inherent issues in the exam itself. So it's entirely different set of questions we ask, not necessarily in conflict with one another.
Okay. Other questions, folks?
So I agree with Sal. It's dense and we're a really smart group and it's still hard to, process. Am I understanding correctly that the end result of this is that we should continue to be an accountability partner to the folks that are, drafting these questions, and this creates a constant cycle of checks and balances that they're thinking about how to ensure the bias isn't here, and then we're double checking it through these exercises, but there's not anything necessarily proactive that we need to do to enhance that process? Am I comprehending that correctly, or did I miss something? And Ron, I think that's directed to you.
Oh, if the question is whether this current process to continue the accountability to checks and balance from the working group to evaluate the efficacy of that effort on the basis of, for example, future diff study, running statistical analysis to see whether the efforts actually translate to something tangible using the diff study, I'll be inclined to say the process does not necessarily translate directly into what you could see in the diff study, because remember, diff study looks at performance across different subgroups, which could be, when you see differences, attributable to a variety of things. Remember, one of the findings in diff study, the most consistent difference is across exam takers across different school types. And that's certainly not one of the things that we are evaluating here. But what accounts for that difference is sort of unknown. But then it comes out highly significant in the study.
So Ron, let me challenge you a little bit. I want you to hypothetically, of course, put yourself as a law school dean. You have all this information about, the questions based on gender, stereotypes, etc. And you're trying to prepare, your 3Ls to graduate, obviously, and to prepare for the bar. How would you prepare them differently if we know that this kind of information, we just can study sort of an after effect, like the bar exam gets sent out, people take it, then you're going to go and analyze the diff again, and we still might come up with these percentages. How does a law school dean like yourself then better prepare your students to work through these kinds of situations?
It's probably the combination. In my limited understanding about the issue, I'm not an exam expert. My limited understanding about, oftentimes these issues come up, especially involving minority and some other groups. One specific example is the stereotype threat. That has to do with the psychological phenomenon of triggering, right? That triggering, the stereotype threat, there's extensive psychological literature pointing to how that mechanism actually works. It has to do with confidence. If there's some potential bias in the language used in the exam that trigger that mechanism, then that's what causes different performance on the exam. But what actually is a trigger word, a trigger concept? That's changes over time and changes, it's different across groups.
Ron, I want to follow up with another question for you. What if we make all the questions gender agnostic? What do you think would be the impact if we were to say, instead of woman A or man X, or even names, right? Peter, John, Sally, Christina. Let's just assume for a second we don't use any of those names and just be gender neutral. How would that impact on psychometrics and scoring and things of that nature? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think to the extent gender and other similar kind of a trigger causes the difference to reveal itself in diff study, that certainly is the right direction. But I'm not sure the linkage statistically you'll be able to establish directly. To identify certain words and say this, if you remove it, you will see a decline in the diff score. I'm not sure that's that direct.
It's hard to quantify it. I can't even quantify my head. I'm not sure how you would quantify something like this. I agree with you. If anything, it's more, maybe this is just me speaking, just more politically driven. Just want to make sure that there's no inherent discriminatory or bias type thing that would create that trigger, like you said, because again, it's hard to quantify that trigger. Anyway, this is something to think about. So thank you.
Other questions from other folks? Okay, I'm not hearing any, so. Ron, any other information or final thoughts on statistics here?
I was surprised that with 7 members evaluating 20 questions actually yielded something that turned out to be useful, not so much in coming to any conclusion, in raising more questions.
Why were you surprised? What were you expecting?
I was thinking entirely in terms of the data available to answer questions. I was surprised by the large number of data points. Actually, I could see some patterns. So in that sense, it validates the value of the exercise. If it didn't answer any questions, it just validates the value in raising more potentially useful questions.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Ron, thanks so much.
You're
Lots
welcome.
of work. Thank you so much for that. It was wonderful. Let's see, at this point, we have now a discussion of selected exam items that were flagged by the DIF working group members. So let me turn it over to Amy and Duane and Lisa and take us through the next part of the business, please.
Okay, so I'm gonna open this up just to talk about how we organize like the upcoming tasks. So with an eye towards the goal that we're trying to accomplish here, which is the development of guidelines, we looked at, we took Ron's results that he just walked us through here. And so these are the questions that were reviewed, the 20 questions. We decided to organize around the total flagged, meaning anybody that had over 10 total as a numerical value in the total flagged by this working group. We are going to dive into those questions, review them as a team because they've been identified as hitting the key components. And I think that the 2 areas that had the greatest amount of commonality as a flag was gender bias and unfair representation. And these items were represented in that along with other of the constructs that we measured against. So we're going to look at this question, 1202, question 3, as it's an 11. Same with question 1202, question 4. I'm about to mess that up, and so on. So we have 7 that we're going to cover. And the idea is to look at the questions, We already know how they were ranked by this group, and walk through to find out, let's look at that question, learn what was identified, so we can start building maybe just statements that will help with the guidelines. So again, it's using the data. The original data was obviously the diff data. And now we had this exercise where we went through the 20 flagged cases, and using the flags from this working group, we are going to walk through those with the majority of flags. You know, here we've identified the 7 that we're going to walk through. Let's look at that data. Let's look at the question, and as a group determine what can we gauge from this that could eventually become a, let me stop sharing, that could eventually become part of the guidelines. So we have split them up, and I believe the first question is one that Duan is going to lead. But before I go there, I just want to make sure, is everybody clear on what we're trying to do here then, is just walk through our flag cases before we.
So, Amy, I just wanted to sort of clarify a little bit. I think it may be more useful to look at this in terms of what the product would be from the group, is more in terms of guiding principles rather than guidelines. I think it might be more useful to look at guiding, you know, to formulate guiding principles rather than guidelines.
Great. And that's a good point, Lisa. I know we've talked about that. So these guiding principles, again, the way they'd be applied is Lisa would share those with the EDGE team as they're developing questions, as they're editing, so that they, as guiding principles on how these questions are could avoid, or what they need to address or consider in the process. So thank you, Lisa. All right, and with that then, maybe Duan, do you want to take the next question?
Sure. And Amy, Lisa, are you gonna show the question and I can summarize the fact pattern?
Yeah, I can pull those up. Give me one.
Yeah, I have, sorry, I have mine. I have my 3 on a PowerPoint, but if Amy wants to share the other ones.
Great. One, I'll pull yours up. Not a problem.
Okay, so I have the first one, which is G1202 Q3. It was an essay question and evidence question. So I'll summarize the fact pattern just to jog people's memory. So this involved a car accident involving Paul and David. Paul alleged that David was swerving into his lane, and David alleged that Paul was speeding and lost control of the car. Vera was a passenger in Paul's car, and Paul testified that Vera calmly told him that she saw a black SUV weaving kind of recklessly through traffic. Then during the trial, David called Molly to testify. Molly was a passenger in a separate vehicle unrelated to David and Paul. And David said that that Molly after the accident had wrote a note saying that that Paul was at fault for the accident. Molly doesn't have any recollection of writing the note, but she acknowledges that the note was written. And then there were 2 prompts to the question, which was Vera's statement admissible? And then there was also a photocopy of Molly's notes, and was that admissible? So my working group comprised of Shalak, Alex, and Dr. Bolton. And when we kind of analyzed this fact pattern, there was a sense from our working group that it perpetuated kind of gender stereotypes. For example, the man driving fast and recklessly, and either the woman was a passive bystander or had shoddy memory. So I think one of the suggestions that came out from our members was perhaps having gender neutral names and staying away from these fact patterns that are, had stereotypical kind of gender norms. So I'll stop there, and anybody should jump in and elaborate, clarify, or.
I think we're on the spot. One thing I personally witnessed is that when you read a question in isolation, some of these issues may not be readily apparent to you. But once you start reading more and more, you start seeing a pattern that is so illuminating that it's just hard not to give or pay any attention to them. So I think, as we continue to find a solution to this, just keep in mind that we can never speak about a specific question in isolation. We really have to talk about everything in context. And I think Ms. Nguyen here really hit the spot on the head, which is the fact pattern is just so clear cut once you start connecting a lot of dots that I'm afraid something has to be done. But anyway, thank you, Ms. Nguyen, for your comments.
And I guess, go ahead. Sorry.
For me, I think we actually went over the same question with Amy Nunes and Sal, I believe, was in my group. Is that right, Amy?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. We highlighted, we looked at the SUV itself. It's a term of a description of a vehicle that other cultures may not and backgrounds may not use the term SUV when describing different types of vehicles. I believe Sal had more of a better description because he had more of a better background of why. For me, I just know that SUV sounds, if I'm not a huge into cars, I want to know what SUV is. All I know is the reason I know SUVs quite well is because I grew up in Orange County area and the rich people drive SUVs and I have to avoid them from hitting me because I'll be dead if they hit me. It's just I guess for us, we looked at the actual vehicle itself, the actual description of the items, the actual usage of items. We highlighted that it might be just better if we just say a red car and a black car. So I'll do it. Oh, anyone else do it?
No, Michael, that was excellent. In fact, that was exactly the point I was making, is that in the the Latino culture, we never call an SUV an SUV. We call la troca, the truck. And it's just commonly known in the la troca. Okay, you're thinking la troca. It just means bigger than a car. It's a truck, and the truck could be an SUV. It could be a small car like a CRV, like those little hatchbacks. It's just not the car. So I think in that sense, if you have Latino students, Latina students that are from neighborhoods, from barrios, from communities where they don't commonly use that word SUV, because it's a word in some cultures, right? Or in some factions of the community, they might get tripped up on that. If that's the first time they've seen it, they're like, what the hell is an SUV? And they won't realize that that's what it is. So Michael's right. That is another point. It's a nuance, but it could be the nuance that delays somebody's answer. It causes them pause. It makes them nervous. It makes them anxious, all kinds of things. And then you got to start applying things. And that's the thing we're trying to avoid, right? When we're writing these things.
I guess to follow up on those last 2 points, recommendations or guidelines saying like, if there are kind of descriptors, like, does it need to be black SUV? If it was simply a car, would you lose anything from an essay question I'm not sure. I'm just throwing that out there.
No, it's a great point, Twan, because sometimes people often think of SUVs as being the culpable one. Well, they have a big truck. They have I used it myself. They have a bigger car, so they bullied their way onto the highway. I mean, every time you're driving, I was at an event with my son this Saturday where all the trucks were cutting in front of everybody, and everybody let them through because they're just simply bigger cars. So maybe there's something in there. And so yeah, I think you're right. If we just kept it just automobile or car, something that's very commonly known, car would be the best example. And stay away from SUV or sedan. Even the word sedan, not commonly used in Latino culture. We don't say llévate el sedan, take the sedan. We say take the car, right? So those kind of descriptive words that are commonly used in American colloquialism don't always translate into the very diverse populations and how they talk. So if we just use car, I think we'd be golden.
I don't think anybody uses sedan anymore, Sal. I think
Am I showing my age, Heather?
Oh, mine too. I knew what it was. I didn't. But I think the SUV point, a couple of things. One is I think media also has trained us to associate a black SUV with something ominous, the bad guys drive black SUVs. So you're already thinking like this person, is at fault. So that's something to kind of keep in mind too. But I think it was Alex that was saying, when you look at the items in isolation, they may not stand out, but then you start to see a pattern. The comments about the term SUV reminded me of something we flagged in another question that I'm sure will come up later. There was and I can't remember what the term is, but when we get to that question, the dots will connect. There was another product that was referred to that I knew what it was, but I was thinking a lot of people won't even know what this is. And so to Sal's point about that trips you up and not only literally stops your clock because you're spinning wheels trying to figure this out, and is this imperative to my answer, but immediately affects your confidence too, because you don't know what it is, and now maybe it does affect my answer. So as we think about patterns, a pattern that subtle, like what are we doing that is causing people to lose time and lose confidence because we're just using unfamiliar terms?
That was my thought as I've been listening to this conversation. Actually, what's coming to mind is some of what Ron was sharing, that some of the things we're finding may not be statistically impactful, right? But they may build on, he mentioned stereotype threat. Oh, sorry, you're still here. So Ron mentioned, sorry about that, stereotype threat and the things that may be causing certain groups to start to doubt themselves and their ability to perform when they're walking in. So I think just keeping that in mind with, as Lisa called them, sort of these guiding principles, is perhaps we're not necessarily providing principles for things that will be statistically significant in the same kind of way, but principles for the things that will reduce some of those unquantifiable but impactful moments. So yeah, I agree with Heather and Sal on checking whether or not some of this language is going to bring up the thing that's going to trip you up and then make you doubt yourself going forward, which to me is why I think our group, and I was, as Ron said, I think in the group with Alex, we kind of bucked up on the, Molly testifying, and did she remember that she had no recollection, and what did that mean, right? Like that might flag for some people questions about their own even performance. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thanks for letting me know that, Sal. I'll move and try to fix it.
And just two quick comments on my end as well. I think one of the guiding principles could be less storytelling and just more fact oriented. Because here it's more about telling a story of a black SUV and all that stuff. I think if we remove the urge, which is common with, say, law school professors, in telling a story rather than just actually, and we attorneys are like storytellers. But the thing is, we need to make sure we just remain as neutral and fact presentation, because these are questions. These are not like influential jury members that we are preaching to or whatever. The second point is, actually, when just reading this question again, I kind of glossed over it, but westbound. The word westbound, I know it's a highway term, but it might be getting into an age category now. That why can't we just say they were traveling west on the freeway or whatever, instead of saying he was driving westbound? What some people may not know what westbound means. I mean, it might be more of my age category, because it's like I know what it is, but it's like, oh, it's west and it's bound to the west, whatever. But I can just rephrase it, say, Paul testified that he was driving west on the freeway.
But that raises a good point. If the people drafting the questions are older and the people taking the exam are younger, there's an issue right there, right?
Hey, Heather, I had some comments on this and I was going to save them to the end, but I did want to just briefly address that. And, we have met as the committee members, we meet the EDGE team, and Amy and Lisa, what I'm about to say is not like insulting to the EDGE team at all. I love them. They're all delightful people every time we meet them.
but the EDGE team is almost entirely comprised of white people. Almost everyone is older in age. There's pretty much no diversity on any front with the EDGE team. And I think that that can't be ignored when trying to discuss this topic of DIF, because if they are the ones, drafting and creating the questions, and there's like a huge divide. And I think that that is also something that at some point we probably should talk about in the working group.
So Bethany, I just want to address that. It's true. So the EDGE team is made up of, very experienced graders. We pick them from, they're chosen, they're interviewed, they're chosen from the grader group, right? So working your way up, that is one of the things that we've been trying to do, and certainly implementing, in the last couple of years, is to, start with diversifying the pool, or be better about diversifying the pool from which the EDGE team comes, right? So these EDGE team members, most of them, in order to have the qualifications necessary from the grading and the exam development perspective, they really need to be more experienced. And so if you start with the pipeline, right? The pipeline to the EDGE team is the graders. Then and we have been trying to do that, and things have been implemented, from good suggestions from COAF to do that. So it may take a few years for you to see the results of that, in the EDGE team. And just to let you know, I oversee the group. I make editing suggestions. I keep in mind all of the things that that COAF has requested, and now from this working group will be requesting in terms of guiding principles. I kind of guide the group in that, so they're not totally working in a vacuum or anything like that. But it is true that the current group is derived from historically from the EDGE team, the graders that have been in place for quite a few years. So it may take a little while for the more experienced graders to work their way into the EDGE team group. But anyway, just to mention that.
Lisa, thanks for that, and thanks to Bethany for your candor. I appreciate that quite a bit, actually. I was just when Heather was talking about, when Heather and Michael were talking about this, I was thinking, does anybody know what a drop top is? If I said what a drop top, people know what a drop top is? I don't know. Maybe the EDGE team wouldn't know what a drop top is. It's a convertible, right? But anyway, Lisa, what it begs the question, and maybe this is one of the guidelines, is does the EDGE team have a certain term? For example, do you change the EDGE team every year or every 2 years? And what's the process for identifying the factors to make a representative? I mean, the COAF's mission in part is to make the practice of law and judicial positions to look more like the state. We need more diversity in lawyers. We need more diversity in judges. Do we have that same mission with EDGE to make the EDGE team look more like the diversity of the state?
Yeah, we do. So the EDGE team is, they have 3-year terms that are, based on evaluations, but they have 3-year contracts, and they're staggered, right? So every 3 years we change out and have new members come in. It's a maximum of 5 terms, so 15 years for each person, so that no EDGE team member can serve more than 15 years. But we do have a staggered group, so every 3 years. Every 3 years that there will be somebody, a new infusion into the team.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say to that is, and this is please don't take this the wrong way, but that's a lot of law school graduates that might adversely be impacted because the length of time. I mean, like you make it a good point, Lisa. It takes a long time to change the composition of it. But if those terms are that long and they have a maximum of 15 years, that's a whole lot of folks that might be adversely impacted, as we see now, by that particular composition. So maybe the guideline there should be shorter terms.
We raised that the very first time we heard this as this group. I remember being in shock that the term could be that long, and us saying that in the very first meeting, that was something we wanted to revisit.
Yeah, and you have to balance that, right, against the experience that is needed for the team. So I totally, that is something that that I do remember also, that COAF was interested in and had concerns about. So I mean, you know, if you change them out every year, I think there's some, it takes a certain amount of time to, because the graders don't do exactly the same as the EDGE team. So right now we do have an apprentice EDGE team, you know, that has been implemented in the last few years. So that that training that is needed for somebody to step right into the EDGE team, because the graders, they don't necessarily get that experience of the development side. So that, you know, the graders focus on grading. The development side is something that is a little bit different skill set. And so, you know, so that's something that we do have a senior grader program as well as an apprentice program where those people can get, you know, some training and be able to, you know, step in more easily into an EDGE team role when the vacancies come up.
So one of the recommendations that Lisa raised and that we've been working to incorporate, and that is diversity in the grading pool. We talked about both regional and, you know, experience-wise, trying to get also newer, more recent attorneys, more recently licensed attorneys on the pool of graders. What I'm thinking is, it sounds like it'll be a while because it needs to be some experience gained. It'll be a while before anybody can be eligible to get into the grading, into the EDGE team pool. What about the idea of creating like a review process? So you do have some graders with that experience, the broad experience of both regional, career experience as an attorney, like review the questions and provide feedback to the EDGE team as part of that process. Just so we're not waiting for this time for people to gain that experience, like as an interim solution to addressing that in development.
And we do have we do have pre-testing, right? We pre-test the performance test, and we pre-test the essay questions. So that feedback is provided, and those are, we do have, you know, that's easier to infuse the pre-testers with more recent attorneys, and we have been doing that. So, so the pre-testers are, you know, provide that valuable feedback, and there are younger attorneys that are younger graders, less experienced graders, newer graders who are in those pre-test pools.
And just to be clear then, Lisa, every question obviously is pre-tested, and it's pre-tested, and so post-drafting, it's pre-tested and then brought back to the EDGE team one more time.
Yeah, so and the performance test drafting team also, but both teams get the feedback from the pre-testing, and they make further edits informed by that pre-testing before the questions ever administered.
Okay. And diversity and diversity is part of the factor for getting the pre-testers on.
Yeah, that is what we strive for. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Should we, I know we've got like 6 other questions, right? We want to review. So why don't we move to the next one, Amy?
Okay, will do.
Thank you, Joanne. Good work. Thank you.
All right, so the next question is mine as well. Let me get to it right now. No, it's mine, period. Hold on. It's and I'm putting it up just to jog everybody's memory, because everybody has seen it. So this is a question involving 3 different parties, Amy, Ben, and Carl. They own this market survey company. Amy and Ben are 2 directors on there. They're president and secretary. Carl does not hold an office. It seems like Amy and Ben have, as directors, making monthly distributions to almost all of the cash in hand. There's a question of like, you know, how responsible they've been with their finances. While Ben was on vacation, Amy stood in and made a 1-year contract with a company called Testco. And so, no, sorry, with Examco. They entered a 10-year agreement with a 50% off discount. This was a concern. So when Ben returned, you know, Amy tried to revoke the contract with Examco. She had signed material as Tesco by Amy President. So now Examco wants to sue Tesco. And the question is, who is, at fault or will have risks damages? Is it Tesco, Amy, Ben, or Carl as individuals? And so this was one that was flagged. This question was flagged for gender bias, culture, language. Hold on. The other one was representation. Also, that it perpetuated stereotypes and with nothing related to offensiveness. So, so given all of that, I think the question is, what could we gain from this that could contribute to a guiding principle in terms of the biases that are demonstrated here? Maybe should we start with gender? Any thoughts? Oh, go ahead, Heather. Sorry about that.
And I have to jump in 2 minutes, but when the question went up, I was thinking scrupulous made me think, are we at the SAT or the bar exam? And maybe just saying diligent or something, steadfast, or a word that people might be more familiar with, again, so they don't get tripped up on something.
Okay.
My gender issue with this question is that, there's a stereotype understanding presumption that like men are good at business and women are not. And so here we have this deal where as soon as the man is gone, this woman makes this bad deal. And we don't even know if it's a bad deal. It's just Ben is saying this. Ben could have said something ahead of time to Amy, but that's besides the point. But there's like this, view that women don't know what they're doing. And so that when I read this question, that was the first issue that came to my mind, at least. And so I'm sorry, Amy, I know in terms of like a guideline.
Well, no, Bethany, I also think that statements could help us create those principles, right? So I think even noting all of the statements will help us get there. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
And then that he convinced her to revoke it. It's like she couldn't stand her ground either.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks. Yeah, any other comments about this particular question? Thank you, Ron. Appreciate your work. Yeah, so I think that's pretty straightforward. I mean, huge gender bias. And Bethany, I agree with you. I mean, the first thing I thought of was like, why do they always say the woman made the bet? Sometimes they make the right decisions. Why don't they do that way? Yeah, so again, a guiding principle, you don't need to pass, but there's a subliminal opinion here made in the question. And if we can dispense with, if the edge group can dispense with the subliminal messages, that would go a long way in eliminating a lot of this bias, both for peoples of diverse populations. So if we can dispense with the subliminal messages, that would be super.
Okay.
So just to let you know, Sal, I'm not sure how old this question is, but certainly, in terms of guiding principles, I have been trying to, guide the EDGE team to less, doing a little bit more role reversal. So, instead of, hopefully you'll notice in some of the more recent questions that it's the woman who's the, who's the batterer, or and the male who's the victim, or, the husband who's the wife who's the breadwinner, and the husband who's the stay-at-home person. So, we do try, more recently, we've tried to.
I was laughing, Lisa, because I kind of almost feel like I took this bar exam question. I took it back in 1988. So, I don't know, a Tesco Examco. But, I mean, going to the last comment you made, I appreciate that we're doing that, but even staying away from traumatic situations, no one has to be the batterer or the breadwinner, or there's hundreds of thousands of scenarios we can create that are away from family dispute. I mean, obviously if it's a family not question, it might be necessary, but in terms of business, it can be straightforward. Two people want to go this way, the other person on the board wants to go that way. Two people decided what should be done, that kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot we can do without having to say, she's the batter, he's the batter, or she's the breadwinner, he's the breadwinner. I mean, again, it connotates too much of people's own personal, biases, and it might affect their confidence. And I think, one good point Ron made, and Shalak, Ron's gone now. One thing he said, when we asked him, how do we tell? Because my feeling here is, if we're giving this to a law school dean commission, they're going to say, so what? What do we do to better prepare our students? And one of the things he said that made a mention in my mind was, he said something about confidence, that it really comes down to the confidence of the test taker. And I think somebody else said it earlier too, that's going to start to affect people's confidence levels. So whatever we put in here that might have an impact on the self-esteem or self-confidence of an individual, I mean, we ought to, maybe there's some, I don't know if there's, I don't know, and I don't want to disparage the Edge team, Lisa, but if there's some diversity training, some unconscious bias training that they have to take, let's step it up, make them take it every year instead of every 2 years. I mean, I know in my company, we take unconscious bias training every 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, and we love it, because in 6 months, you can forget what you just learned, and the unconscious bias creeps in. That's why it's unconscious. So if we can do an unconscious bias training for the Edge team and mix it in with any kind of other training to sensitize the group, that might be helpful too. Maybe that might get rid of these subliminal messages.
Yeah, just to let you know, they are provided with as well as all the graders. So that started as a with input from COAF. So I think it's been a couple of years. It's all, they all have to be trained. The pre-testers have to be trained. The graders all get that training.
Cool. That's great.
What are the benefits that the use of genders might confer that we may not be aware of? In other words, why are the graders using genders in drafting and compiling questions?
I think that in some subjects, or some maybe even more fact specific than that, it may be useful in terms of helping to avoid confusion. And this is something that I'm not saying every question, there may be questions and subject matters that gender doesn't really play a factor in lessening confusion, or doesn't play a factor in helping to explain the fact pattern. So certainly that can be incorporated into a guiding principle that when it doesn't matter, then you don't use gender.
Yeah, I think that's a good step in the right direction. I can't think of a scenario where gender would play a role, much less a substantive role, in a question. If anything, the fact that we're naming a specific gender in a domestic abuse question, for example, that would only permeate the bias even further. So I would love to know the answer. If the Edge team can provide or have a presentation about the use of genders and how that might help them in drafting a question, I would like to know that as the background, because right now I'm just speculating as to why they would use it. But there could be, like I said, to resolve a potential confusion. Again, I just can't think of anything. I mean, we don't really test domestic abuse. We don't really test, anything of that nature in any of the exam. It's certainly not one of the topics. You can say it could be part of the crim pro topic. It could be criminal procedure, but or we even will at state. But again, even those subjects, I can't think of why gender would be necessary. And if gender, and again, I'm just speculating, if gender is not necessary, that means if we can do away with gender, then we don't even need, we don't even need the Edge team to go through bias training and diversity inclusion training. I'm not saying those are not necessary, but I don't think, we would have to put so much focus on making sure that all the graders and the Edge team, get the necessary training that they need to make sure that they're paying closer attention to the questions that they're drafting.
So I can think of one example. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I can think of one example off the top of my head in terms of possible gender, be helpful in a question. For example, in a wills and trust question, if in the will, the testator says, I leave X to my son and I leave Y to my daughter. So, in that sense, it may be less, to distinguish a son and a daughter might be less confusing than, two sons or two daughters. If there's distinctive, questions or calls that you want to be addressed. So, I mean, that's just one example I can think of.
Understood. But I mean, in that example, it makes no difference if we were to name, the son A and daughter B, right? It's still pretty clear to me. And I'm not aware of any governing law that would change the answer depending on the gender being called out. That law just doesn't exist.
No. I'm just taking in terms of confusion on the parties.
I understand. But why is it? I understand. I understand where you're coming from, and that's well taken. What I'm saying is, if I were to rename it X and Y, why would that create any more confusion than just son and daughter?
well, Alex, just looking at this question with that in mind, like here we have Amy, Ben, and Carl. If we change that to person 1, person 2, and person 3, rather than use names, as you're looking at the question and you start creating your notes, one thing is you start looking at it and you say, okay, each paid $50 for the shares, right? And you start thinking, is this going to be about money? What's this question going to be about? Then you have to go back and say person 1 and person 2 are the president and secretary. Person 3 holds no office. I mean, I think part of it is the facility of just having the name, rather, like it makes it for a smooth kind of description of like how you need to start chalking out your notes versus P1, P2, and you have here differences in the power balance, right? And so anyways, I sometimes just wonder, maybe using gender neutral names might be a better way to do this rather than no names. I just think that if too many parties are involved, it might make it more difficult for an applicant to hear person 1, person 2, person 3 versus more gender neutral names. It just as a suggestion, because I don't know about you, but just as I started thinking about doing that here, using the person 1, person 2 rather than names, it can get challenging as people are trying to chalk out their, the facts.
Let's go to Bethany. She had her hand up. Bethany.
Yeah. So, and I didn't hear that. I didn't know if Alex had said using person 1 or person 2 or whatever, but I had initially, first of all, I want to say I agree with you, Alex. I hadn't thought about it before, but there really is probably no real actual functional need for gender itself to be used in the questions. And I think that the questions could easily be rewritten without even using, I can rewrite, I rewrote most of this without using pronouns entirely, just rephrase the sentences, because I know some people have their issues with using they, or, for when they don't want to use gender, even though that could be easily done. But I do think, Amy, that we could use gender neutral names, because I think it would be insulting if we switched over to using not using gender, and then non-gendered people don't deserve names. I think that is an even worse look than using gender stereotypes. But I mean, I understand that this is probably not something automatic, but in light of the fact that we are part of the drafting, when the questions do come to us, we could raise this again. I know we're having a session coming up soon at the next meeting, but I'm a huge fan of trying to decrease as much gender usage in the questions as possible in the future.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you, Alex and Bethany, really great points. And one thing, I mean, if there is a desire to have a facilitative identifiers, I mean, it may not help to say person A, B, and C, but maybe have, I think in math, they do this in math problems where they give it, person J has it, and J, when they use just the letters, but they're not A, B, C, so it's not confusing. It's very distinctive letters, or combination letter. Person BX does this, person YZ does that. So there's a way for people to categorize and facilitate the movement of information across the problem. Could be something like that too. That could be an alternative.
That's James Bolton. remove the gender and you remove the question too far from reality.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's the fine line here. Yeah, good point. All right, do we, any other comments on this one, or do we move to the next one?
Just one final point. Just one final. Dr. Bolton's comment is well taken. I do want to say something. I remember in law school, you know, we oftentimes use abbreviations. That's something that is highly encouraged, like P for plaintiff, D as in defendant, green acre is in green, black acre, white acre. Remember all those terms? It's there for a reason. Gender neutral. But no one would ever get confused what P is. No one will ever get confused what D is. And if we are going to be doing something that no other jurisdictions would be doing, we ought to be the first to have our own abbreviations to indicate, or at least to show the effort that is being done to remove gender bias in our question. That's all.
All right, good points. Amy, let's move to the next one.
Okay, next question. 1 second, that is question 1207 Q3.
I think that's you, Lisa.
That's mine, I think, yeah. So let me share my screen and put the question up.
Oh, I have it.
Oh,
You, Lisa, there we go.
okay. Okay, so this is where is the call though? Let me wait. Okay, there it is. You know what? I have it all on one page. So let me share my screen.
Okay,
Is that okay?
sure.
Okay.
It's on a PowerPoint, right?
Yeah. So can everybody see that?
Yes.
Almost, there we go.
So this is an evidence question, and in particular, it's a California evidence question because you see at the, this is how we indicated at the end, the bottom of the page, it says answer according to California law. So anyway, this is a fact situation where it's fairly dense. I don't want to necessarily read the whole thing, but it is a situation where we have Vicky, a victim. And so you'll notice too that, and then Dean is the one who's the defendant. So oftentimes the name does start with, you know, who it is. So V, victim, Vicky, and D, Dean, defendant. And then Whitney, you'll see, is a witness. That's a W. So it's I rather than to sort of go through this fact question, I know that I'm pretty sure that Bethany, you and Heather, who's no longer in the meeting, had some questions probably here. There's probably some gender issues here in terms of, you know, Vicky being a victim, being a female. And so, you know, essentially it's talking about, or the call of the questions are whether or not certain pieces of testimony should be admitted or not by the court. So I don't know if we want to open this up to discussion, or if we want to take just a few minutes to read this one. It is pretty dense.
Yeah, well, Lisa, I'll start because me and Heather, we did have this one. And I mean, I think we can all tell one of the obvious ones is that, you know, a woman has been murdered by presumably a man, right? So I'm not even really going to get into that. But going back to one of the comments that Alex had made earlier about, you know, seeing patterns, I think that this is a good example of one of those where, because one of the things me and Heather had highlighted was the frequent use of murder in the questions. And we understand why, right? Everybody knows what murder is. It's a crime. It's easy to test on. But like, there are a lot of people who have experienced murder, close family members, right? It's an extremely triggering, traumatic experience for those that have gone through it. And so it's not that it's bad that murder is on the bar exam, it's that it is repeatedly there in a variety of forms and a variety of manners and ways. And so we had made a general comment, Heather and I, just that to the extent that maybe we could explore other crimes that are easy to test on and try to get away from so much murder, that might be a useful thing. And I know that's not specifically gender, but that was, I recall this one, a question that we had discussed on our call.
Can I just sort of, as we used to say, piggybacking off of Bethany, and I hope my sound's a little clearer now. But with that, I think keeping in mind, I think my group sort of discussed, to Dr. Bolton's point, that there are some things in reality, like law students study really difficult topics. We teach things around rape and sexual assault in law school. We teach domestic violence, right? Like, so they're used to sort of seeing and studying those things, but keeping in mind that we can vary it. So to Alex and Bethany's points about the patterns, can we make the murders such that everyone's getting murdered at some point? I know that sounds, whatever, but like if there's, 2 or 3 family law questions, right? But one of them, the batterer is female, and one of them, the widow or the widower. And that way, if I'm doing the whole exam, all of these patterns aren't sort of triggering that stereotype threat as I go along. And it's just, sort of everyone's equal opportunity victim in this case.
And also, I guess to build off of that last point, and I don't know if this is possible, Elisa and Amy, but once you have assembled, selected your essay and your performance question, is there a way to, I guess, catalog to see that there's not certain patterns, maybe take more of a global view and kind of the questions selected? Because, I found this exercise difficult because when I was looking at the questions in isolation, things weren't popping out. But when we reconvene as a working group, we definitely, from the first 3 questions, the patterns jumped out, and then I could not see them. So I wonder if there's a way to take that global kind of perspective, so to minimize some of these patterns and stereotypes.
Yeah, there's no catalog right now per se. I mean, there's the continuity of the EDGE team, so they know their banks. The EDGE team, they become subject matter experts in their particular subjects, and each EDGE team member, there's 6 of them, are assigned to 2 of the question subjects. So they are very, very familiar with their banks and all of the questions in them, and they know what has been, given their experience, they know what has been administered before. And so, I can have the EDGE team members catalog, so right now it's in their heads, right? Catalog the subject matter and the topics of each of the questions in their banks that have been administered in the last, 10 years or whatever you want to look at, as well as we do keep charts of the, for every question selection and nomination process, charts that indicate what subjects have been tested in the last 10 years worth of exams or 8 years worth of exams. So that, we're not hopefully testing on the same subject over and over and over again, except professional responsibility, which the Supreme Court has indicated they do want tested on every exam.
I was just more thinking of perhaps once you do your essay and your performance test selection, there's 3 essay and 1 performance exam. Is that what it is? Or
5 essays and 1.
5 essays and 1. Then perhaps you can catalog it, and of those 6, maybe not more than 1 is a murder situation, or maybe not 2 is more than X or something, just so that there aren't.
Yeah, that's always taken into consideration in question nomination and question selection by me and the team. So when we present questions that are been proposed by the EDGE team to the Committee of Bar Examiner Attorney members, that is always taken into account to make sure that the 5 questions complement each other in terms of the 5 essay questions complement each other, as well as with the performance test, so that we don't have all super difficult with dense fact patterns all in the same exam. So all of that is part of the the process of building our exam, right? It's all taken into consideration.
And I just want to add one comment regarding this topic, because I know that one of our broader goals with the bar is that, I don't even want to say the words, but we're testing for minimum competency, right? And so from a practical standpoint, I'm going back to my murder questions because I feel strongly about this. When we're preparing these applicants to get out, I know we want to, test them on things that they know about, but from a real life standpoint, when they begin their practice, murder is not a thing that they need to actually like know about. No first 3-5 year attorney is doing murder trials, right? The things that they're doing are misdemeanors, which are also just as easily testable as the larger crimes like the rapes and the murders and the assaults, because the elements are just as defined. And I don't think that we would actually lose anything in terms of preparing students if we like try to find ways to incorporate some of the alternative crimes that people are out here committing that those going into criminal law might actually encounter when they start their practice, you know?
Great comments, other comments, folks?
Yeah, so one thing I note about this question, I'm just going through my notes. It's very subliminal, which is, where it says the prosecution then called Ella, Dean's next door neighbor. I know a lot of times when we read that sentence, it doesn't really provoke anything, but I do want to bring it up to the group that the phrase, the girl next door, has a very cultural, there's a cultural meaning to it. And oftentimes it really sort of refers to, an all-American young woman living next door. And I still understand. And so when I'm reading this, it's sort of like, well, in addition to gender bias, it sounds to me there's also racial bias to this phrase. I'm not sure whether it was intentional or not, but I think, things of the nature, I think the EDGE team needs to be, more careful, right? You could say Dean's adjacent neighbor. It doesn't really have to use the cultural word or phrase next door. But anyway, I just wanted to point it out in case someone sort of spot the same issue that I did.
Should we move on to the next?
I was just going to say, if there's no more on this one, let's thank you all for those great comments and observations and guidelines proposed. Let's move to the next one, Duan, if you have it, I think.
I have the next one. It's a performance test, G1302QA, and I'm not sure if it makes sense. Amy, if you have it up, you can put it, but it's there's a lot of materials on here. I'll just go through the fact pattern. This was a contract question. There was a memo that was from a Scott Rawlings, who's an attorney, to the applicant to draft a persuasive letter. The facts of this is that Mr. Harry Yamamoto, who's the owner of Yamamoto, asked the firm to represent him in a contract deal. There was allegedly a handshake deal between him and Cox to log some timber. And so they included transcripts for Mr. Yamamoto and the other party. There was some governing authorities and some excerpts from case laws. And I think our working group, we thought that this had some cultural bias in the fact pattern, in the portrayal of Asians as shifty and not doing deals appropriately. And all the parties were also male. And we also thought that we weren't sure if there was real value in kind of naming the countries. Mr. Yamamoto, it said several times that he was from Japan and so forth. So one of the suggestions is perhaps using fictitious countries might be a better way to approach this. Do other folks have thoughts?
Other thoughts, folks?
And I guess in keeping in line with kind of the guiding principle, we also thought maybe sometimes less of the descriptors might be helpful. And I'm seeing that as we talk from one question to another.
Yeah,
Yeah, it kind of goes back to Michael's point early on. I think Michael said, less of the storytelling. It might help eliminate a lot of what we're talking about. So.
Yeah, I think that it may be a little bit more difficult to do with a performance test, though, because performance test is supposed to be more realistic, right? It's sort of as part and parcel of it needs to have more facts in it to make it, more realistic.
Okay, if there's nothing else, let's move to the next one.
Okay.
We're on which questions is now, Amy, 5 or 6?
Oh, this would be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay,
So
we have
number
7.
5.
Okay.
Yes.
Actually, real quick, on
Yeah,
Lisa's
Michael.
comment for performance test. The rules for performance test is the fictitious jurisdiction of what? Colombia or something like that?
Yeah, we usually use Colombia and Franklin.
So we can't do fictitious countries. Just putting that out there instead of saying that, you know,
Oh, those are states.
from Japan.
Sorry,
But-
those are states.
Oh,
Mhm.
states, but you
Yeah,
know, we
yeah.
have used fictitious stuff in the performance test.
Mhm.
And I think this factor in did have Colombia as a jurisdiction, but I think the country of origin for one of the parties named Japan. So
Nothing else.
Thanks, Michael. Amy, let's go to the next one.
Okay, and the next one is mine as well, and it's got so many different pieces that I agree with Juan. I'm not going to pull it up. This is a performance test question that deals with needing to write a memo, and it's a related to a domestic battery case where the applicant is I'm sorry, the victim is recanting her story, and so it's a woman who's been battered by her husband, and you know, the information in the library includes a transcript as well as other material, the transcript of the 911 call, as well as expert testimony from somebody, a domestic violence expert. So you know, I'll open it up and highlight that as just reminders of what the case scenario was. So if anybody has any thoughts or responses to that question, be helpful. I mean, and the obvious is, again, we have that the perpetrator is a male, victim is a female.
Anybody have any thoughts, comments, ideas? Guidelines. Pretty obvious, I think, with that one. Okay. I keep seeing something around Audrey. Are you trying to, I see a yellow band around you. Are you trying to, if you are Audrey, I can't hear you. Oh, no, I saw the little yellow thing. I thought maybe you were trying to say something. Okay. Did you?
So sorry. I think it's
Okay, no worries. No worries. It's all good. It's all good. Okay. Let's go to the next one then, Amy.
All right, the next one I believe is Lisa's.
Okay.
And I think it's also a performance test question.
No, this is an essay question.
Okay.
Yeah, so I will share my screen again. So this was question 1 from February 2018. It is I believe it's a crossover contracts and professional responsibility question. You can always tell a professional, just to let you know, professional responsibility question, because at the end it will say answer according to California and ABA authorities. We do test on both of those for the professional responsibility. So this one involves the sale of a warehouse, and the warehouse roof was made of synthetic material, and it leaked. There were various warranties that were given, and then at trial there was expert testimony by a chemical engineer. And you know, but the attorney, one of the attorneys, knew that the expert was going to be giving testimony that wasn't quite correct. So the call of the question asks for its 2 prongs. One has to do with the contract. Will Beverly be able to rescind the contract on the basis of misrepresentation and or non-disclosure? And then the second question has to do, a second call has to do with the professional responsibility prong of this question, and whether or not there were any ethical violations that were committed by the lawyer Lou. So I don't remember, Bethany, you and Heather had what your comments were with regard to this question, and if anybody else does.
Oh, yeah, I think that one of ours, I think it was Michael, maybe I was just talking about like the more is less. I think that this maybe could be one of those where we could try to skim away at some of the details. Yeah, I just remember us talking about the top tile, what that was, but I'm sorry, I can't really remember specifically what we had discussed.
Yeah, I don't really remember on this one either. Did anybody else in the working group have issues that they saw in this question? I think this one did have quite a bit of diff. If I mean, Amy, I think you can maybe able to see in your chart that Ron did. Don't remember which one had the most diff flags.
Yes, so let me double check. This one had diff flags in gender, culture, offensive, stereotype representation, construct irrelevance, and also in language. The highest ratings were in gender, stereotype representation, and language.
Does
Yeah, I
anybody
mean, I was just gonna say, I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood where everybody's roofs caved in after 3 years. That's where it was. So, you know, for me, I look at them like, yeah, I'm not surprised. 5 years, that's a long time for a roof. You know, my landlord would always be, you know, charge my parents money for a new roof every 2.5 years. So, yeah, I mean, again, the scenarios, I mean, if this was supposed to be sort of a more of a business-like thing than a reality thing, then we're good. But yeah. Any comments, any questions, guidelines proposed besides less storytelling? Okay, let's go to the sixth one, or now seventh one.
Yeah, the last one.
Good, yeah, because we want to get some time to sort of some, if anyone's been, and I'm sorry, I haven't been keeping track. I stopped after the first one, but keep track of some of the guidelines we proposed. We want to reserve some time at the end to talk about what will be the guidelines we want to propose, or some of our next steps. So let's go to the seventh one, Lisa or Amy.
I think it's mine. Is it the last one? Is mine?
I think you do, yeah. That was
Okay.
your second one, you had 3.
Yeah, so I have 3. Okay, so let me share my PowerPoint on this one. Hold on. Okay, everybody see, this is a essay question 2 from the July 2018 exam, so a little bit more recent. This one is an evidence question. Again, a California evidence question, because you can see at the bottom, answer according to California law. So in this one, Deb, this one did have sort of a switch up here. So Deb, I think, was the batterer of her live-in boyfriend, Vic. And it's evidentiary. We have some pieces of evidentiary evidence here that the court is being asked to whether or not the court should have admitted. There's a 911 tape that was made when the incident was called in. And then there's Sam, who was, I believe, a prior live-in boyfriend who had a similar experience with being battered by Deb. And then there was a computer printout involved. That's the third piece of evidence that the applicant is requested to analyze, and that had to do with Deb testifying that she was working at her computer at the time of the assault, which was 20 miles away, and that this printout was supposed to be evidence of her alibi. So Bethany, and do you remember what it was? If because this one did have a switched up sort of, Deb is the batterer and is the boyfriend victim, but there may have been other gender or other issues. I can't remember from this question.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry to be a broken record. My main one was, again, just this is another us beating on each other, violence against intimate partners, which is just a common recurring theme. And so I remember that was one of my primary comments that I had about this question.
Thanks, Bethany. That's good. Other thoughts?
I guess my thought is, I do want my attorney to know some competence in terms of these sensitive topic issues. And I guess the main point of this group is to try to evaluate, any inherent biases that we introducing in other stuff. But also it does come down to, I think Dr. Bolton is saying that if you remove too much, you remove too much of reality. And this is something in which I was just mulling over with, probably with Alex Chan and Esther, in terms of the revising the bar exam with the Blue Ribbon Commission, because I'm not sure if there's a way just to ask directly in the bar exam, we ask hypotheticals and we ask responses and all. But for these sensitive topics such as special abuse, murder, of course, I always joke, or not joke, that's not the right term. I always make comments about, you will never see a sexual abuse question on the bar exam, because that's not gonna, I highly doubt we're gonna be asking that anytime. I won't be, what I'm coming back is just, these are, like say, Dr. Bolton, I was mulling over just that if we remove too much, then we remove the point of actual sensitive topic stuff and we moving from reality. Not to say reality is stereotyping and all that stuff. That's not what I'm advocating. It's just, I want my attorney to be able to be competent enough to know special abuse, murder, and not like like, I know there's specialized attorneys, like criminal attorneys for murder and all that stuff. But in terms of any attorney, which is what the bar exam is testing, is minimum competence in multiple categories for attorneys to enter for people to enter the profession. I'm not sure. It would be interesting. For now, we're trying to figure out if we can remove the biases. But whether or not, if Alex and Esther on the Blue Ribbon Commission, if they can find another means to test these basic core concepts and information without actually doing an hypothetical that could be sensitive. Does that make sense, I guess?
Yeah.
So I'm putting a lot of pressure on Alex and Esther then, the Blue Ribbon Commission.
Yeah, I mean, this could have, I mean, I think all the points obviously we're making today are valid, and, but I mean, going back to Bethany's, which is a good one. I mean, this could have easily been, maybe Deb's been accused of stealing his lighter, and, she stole a personal property that belonged to her boyfriend. You can still carry a fact pattern and tell a story without having to resort to some sort of a violence or abusive. So, she stole something. He says he stole it. The other guy comes in, says she used to pop things off the counter all the time, stole his milk out of the fridge, or whatever the case may be. I remember taking the bar. I haven't taken the bar actually for a long time. I don't remember any of these being fun. They could be funny too. I mean, they don't have to be so serious. He came in and said she always stole his milk out of the refrigerator. Okay, maybe there's a little humor, maybe there's a little bit of truth, but again, they can be real life stories. I mean, we don't all live lives that are so tragic. there's got to be some good to it. So if you're going to tell a story, then tell a story. Don't tell a tragedy. And maybe that's one of the guidelines. If you have to do the story, mix it up with a little bit of real life scenarios where there's a little bit of both in it. Other thoughts, comments?
Yeah, just sorry to go along with that. I think it's also looking at the relevancy of the construct, right? So if I'm reading the first paragraph, I think, oh, this is a question about battery. I need to know those elements and so on and so forth. And turns out it's actually an evidence question. It's about admissibility. And so I think being a little bit more nuanced to Michael's point, and we go through this every year at the law school, right? Like you're taking crim law, you have to talk about, sexual abuse or whatever, because those are concepts that as lawyers you may need to know and you may need to work with. But then do we have to put it in something where that's not what's being tested at all? So that might be helpful with Sal's. If it's a question about evidence, then maybe it can be a little bit lighter, but then we save the heavy stuff for the truly heavy stuff. And to me, that is a little bit better with saying, we know you're going to have to deal with these in these contexts. And so let's put it in those contexts.
There you go. Yeah.
One observation about this question, not to be redundant, but if you look at the last paragraph, I think the drafter overused pronouns. Here it says, Deb took the stand in her own defense. She testified that she was working at her desktop computer in her office at the time of the assault. The drafter overused pronouns and really bogged down the question, right? We don't really, literally you could rephrase the sentence to say, D testified working at a computer at the time of the assault.
Yeah.
Didn't change the fact pattern a bit, right?
Yep.
So I think, this is sort of one of those prime examples where pronouns just doesn't get you any more benefit. If anything, it really distracts the call of the question instead of trying to condense the fact pattern in a shorter amount of time that would allow the applicant to have more time to answer the call of the question.
Yep. Good point. Okay. Other thoughts, final thoughts, comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any of that. I think that was the last question, Amy. Is that correct? Okay, so just given the time, we've got about 15 minutes before closing. Can we, if I can impose this on somebody who might be taking or have some semblance of an idea of guidelines we talked about, what our next steps are here as this committee? What should or can our next steps be with respect to all we've talked about from Ron all the way through to what all these wonderful comments have been surmised?
So can I just give you my thoughts about what we could do and what I thought the exercise would help us with is, I think we've come up with statements about different concepts, about different ideas. I thought maybe we could run through the list and see if we could start the guidelines. The one thing I'm concerned is, even if I read my list, perhaps it's not comprehensive, right? Should we try to compile a comprehensive list, even if we did this, like, for example, I added my notes, or we could send all our notes to Heidi if we have any. And maybe at a next meeting, we review those notes and then try to use that to develop these guiding principles is one thought. Or I read my notes now and we try to do the guiding principles in our last 15 minutes. So anyways, I just put that out there as an alternative. Do we want to be more comprehensive and wait? Or try to accomplish that in the remaining time that we have?
Yeah, Duan, let's go to you real quick.
I think it might be hard to do in the next 10 minutes. I wonder if it might make sense for like the staff to take a first pass at putting together something, and then we could circulate it and then maybe reconvene for a meeting to then iron it out. But I think it's just really difficult to wordsmith and think about. I think there's some themes that I'm hearing.
I agree. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Yeah, anybody vehemently object to that idea of the staff putting together the initial thoughts around the guidelines we proposed and taking it up in another meeting? I'm seeing nobody objecting to it, so that sounds like a good, I don't think we need to take a call for a question here. Do we, Heidi? I think just knowing that that's where a consensus is, staff will take the pen and come back to us with, and then hopefully you might be able to get it to us like maybe before the meeting so we can have a chance to digest it. That'd be great. Okay. Do we need to talk about another meeting date or do we have one planned already?
We don't have one planned, so if you want to propose some dates, Sal, or we can also send a poll.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to do this like in 3 weeks or something, or is that too long? What, I don't know what the. what the
3
pleasure-
weeks might be tight because of posting deadlines and all that stuff. My suggestion is maybe in November, but we really aim to finalize this before the end of the year. And then that'll be like, that'd be
Funny,
great.
because I thought November was 3 weeks away, but you're right. I think to your point, maybe later in November.
Maybe, yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah, that's good. So let's do something maybe later in November with the idea that we want to get some sort of closure on this by the end of the year. I think that'd be great. So at the next meeting, when we set it, will be sometime in the latter half of November. And then we'll take up I think the agenda there will just be looking at the guidelines and spending the time digesting them and making some concerted effort to get final ones done to make recommendations. And these recommendations will be going to the state bar, yeah? Okay. All right,
Amy,
everybody.
does that feel comfortable or is that?
Oh, no, and that's very helpful. The one thing I just do want to add is later in November, are we aiming then after Thanksgiving or before Thanksgiving?
Oh, that's a good point.
So Thanksgiving is the 25th and
25th. Yeah.
25th. So, or do we want to do it the week of the 15th, which is a week right before Thanksgiving? What would be easier and for everyone and less burdensome?
It depends on your posting guidelines. I mean, what kind of, you have to give 10 days ahead of the public agenda?
Yes.
So that's a pretty tight deadline. So I mean, that only gives the staff about a week and a half to put things together. And that given all your other work, I don't want to, make that hard. Can we say maybe the first week in December? Would that be okay with everybody? Does that feel too long?
We have a committee of bar examiners meeting in the first week of December also.
We also have a co-op meeting the first week of December.
Yeah.
I'm not working on the day of
Cancel those.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
What was that?
Thanksgiving?
On
Was that
Thanksgiving?
Work on Thanksgiving? Okay.
What's the date of your December meetings?
Yeah.
December 3rd and 4th, I think. Is it 4th and 5th?
3rd and 4th.
Yeah, 3rd and 4th. Is it in person or is it still Zoom?
It's still Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
What about November 29th, that Monday?
That might work. It works for me.
Oh, yeah, that works.
I'm sorry, which day?
November 29th.
29th.
Yeah.
I am unavailable from noon to 2 on that day, but otherwise I'm available that day.
Okay.
So we could do like 10 to noon or 2 to 4?
Yeah. I think that 10 a.m. I can do anytime as early as 6 a.m. on, but not that you guys have to, but before noon, I think this 10 a.m. to noon worked pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think everybody's feeling good about that. All right, so why don't we do that then? Thanks to everybody. So we'll reconvene on 29 November, sometime before noon for a couple of hours to just talk about the guidelines we've all come up with. And bravo to all of you, great job on really great comments here. And then we'll have the staff get us something maybe before Thanksgiving or maybe the morning of, whatever works.
Before. Yeah, we should do it before. And I just want to encourage the staff also, I'll send a follow-up email, but we should probably meet earlier while this is still fresh in our brains and we don't lose our notes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you to the staff, to everyone on State Bar and Committee of Bar Examiners. Great work. If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Quick. What was the date again?
29 November.
Got it. Thank you.
I'll move to adjourn. This is Bethany.
All right, thanks, Bethany. Do we have a second?
I second.
Alok, second, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or we have to take a roll call, Heidi. It's just a motion to adjourn. We don't, I don't think we need a roll call.
I don't think we need a roll call.
No, we don't. Okay, I heard nothing but ayes. All right, thank you, everybody. Good work, everybody. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.